Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I'm really excited to have Mark Cox,
Hey, Tim, it's great to be here.
who's joining me from Canada. And we're going to be talking about your new book, Mark. I don't have a hard copy to hold up, but they are Learning to Love Selling. Mark's just he's got social selling as well. That's good. Look at that.
Two of my favorite books.
There you go. So Mark's got a new book out. I've read the soft copies, which is why I can't hold one up. Before we get into talk about that, Mark, where can people find you?
Inthefunnel.com is our website, Tim, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Mark Cox on LinkedIn, and of course, Mark Cox at In the Funnel on LinkedIn. Love to connect with everybody. And Tim, by the way, thanks so much for having me on the show. As you know, I'm a huge fan of your book, Social Selling. I was really excited to join here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're very kind, Mark. So tell us, why did you decide to write a book?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, I love to learn, and my belief is what we do as a profession, it's not a trade. And I've had this opportunity to enjoy the profession of B2B sales for a little over 20 years by learning from some of the great authors and leaders, thought leaders in the space before me. So I'm a big fan of the opportunity of getting incrementally better. And I'm also addicted to learning. So when I looked at the landscape, Tim, there's so many books I love that provide lots of help along the path, whether it's strategic help, whether it's tactical help in certain point areas of B2B sales. But what I thought was missing was a book that said, okay, if you're a CEO, an entrepreneur, a sales leader, or even a salesperson, how do you build your sales playbook for your territory for the next quarter or year? What are the things needed to build that game plan to win for the next quarter of years? Sort of aggregating some of the best thinking along, the lines of strategy, and then bringing to bear some of the most important things tactically. So we call it the sales playbook, and we think anybody today could pick up this book and leverage it for their business for the next quarter or year and really make an impact. That's why we wrote the book.
So Mark, you clearly have the fan club watching today because Jake Warren says the book is a must read.
Oh, thanks, Jake.
And Andrew Starwick says Jake Warren agreed. And Michael Zornes says 100% love the book.
Wow.
There you go. With a very small sample of 3. Well, with me as well, 4. We all.
Well, thanks to all of them.
So tell us about it, because what you've done in the book is, for me, it's not about how you basically make cold calls or something like that, and it's really about organizing yourself as a salesperson, isn't it?
It is, Tim. And by the way, thank you for providing such an amazing testimonial for the book.
That's okay. And Julia has brought a copy of the book.
Thank you, Julia. Wonderful. Lovely. What we're trying to do, Tim, what we thought through was for anybody out there, you've got a core business capability or a product or service that you sell as a direct contributor. We tried to simplify to think of what are the 4 things you need to think about to convert that capability into revenue for your business. So this is applicable for, again, leaders, entrepreneurs, or direct contributor salespeople. And the 4 things we are serial and linear, meaning you have to think of them in order. First thing that we need to do, we need to understand our value proposition to our market. Okay. And value propositions is 3-legged stool. What do you do? How does what you do tie to a desired outcome of your client? And what's your competitive differentiation? If I know that, I then need to prioritize the pursuit of my target market. That's called territory management. So first identify your ideal client profile, and then figure out how you're going to build pipeline of those people, whether it's growing your existing base of customers or going after new logos. But then you actually have to do it. You have to do demand generation, reaching out into the universe to make first contact And then finally, we have to sell better than the next company. We call that sales execution. So those are the four things that make up the core sales playbook. And we took a lot of time simplifying this down to those four things.
Because what you've done is you've broken the book down, isn't it? Into you've got the sales playbook, where you take the person through the value proposition, territory management, and then demand generation. So you're in effect walking a person through. So Brian says, what a great book, Mark. I couldn't put it down, and it was so easy to read and opened my eyes to areas for improvement in
Wow.
the sales position.
What lovely feedback. Boy, thank you.
What a
Thank you.
lovely,
Thank you.
all those nights that you worked on that and you get that. It's not a great feeling, Mark.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian. Boy, it's boy, we've got such a wonderful community of people being so supportive. I so really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Tim, I write in the morning. So
Okay, okay.
It's 4:30 in the morning and away you
Right.
go. And as you know, you've got to do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's this, what you've done is that you've broken it down to make it easy steps for people. So for the technical entrepreneur who knows that he or she has got to get into sales, how do I organize myself to take those first steps? For the salesperson that may not have actually had any training, how do they get and understand how to sell? That's kind of how I saw when I read it. I thought this would be perfect for those people.
That's exactly who we wrote it for.
Okay.
So you're absolutely spot on. And the truth of it is, Tim, as well, even if you think of an enterprise sales organization, a lot of times you go into a large organization like SAP. I know you've got a background with Oracle. Somebody's going to step into a territory.
Yeah.
And a lot of it defaults immediately to opportunity management because they're so well known and there's deals in play and they took over some deals from somebody else. But I really think it's important every quarter to take a pause and go, let me think about what I'm doing before I just go out there and execute and do opportunity management. And so I think it can also apply to that larger enterprise where I've got a territory, even if it's a mature business. How do I take another set of eyes to this, take a clean set of eyes, and actually grow my business in the territory like an entrepreneur, by the way? I find the folks who are best in those organizations.
It's interesting you say that, Mark, because in the area of Oracle where I worked, we had 69 salespeople. We had 7 salespeople that always did 200%.
Yeah.
Always. And most sales teams are kind of like that. So I was actually given a job to say what's happening to these salespeople and why are these seven people? And what they did was that they did what you just said every quarter. Now I know that organization is now working on a monthly basis because kind of that's SaaS is how you do that. But the other 62 were basically doing that maybe on a yearly basis if they were doing it. But
right.
what the 7 that were overachieving were doing was sitting down every quarter and saying, okay, how can I do this better?
Yes. You're so spot on, Tim. And then, those others you said that are doing it on an annual basis, our experience has been when they did it on the annual basis, they didn't own it. They were doing it for some sales kickoff meeting, so it was for the higher ups. And what's kind of interesting is if you go into those organizations and consult, you say, hey, listen, how's it going in your territory? Let's say we're mid-year through and say, okay, let's go back to that plan you shared with everybody at the sales kickoff. They don't even know where to find it. Like it's not just that they're not using it. They've never opened it again after that annual kickoff, but they can't even find it to go back to it. So I always used to joke in those, because I used to be a part of the corporate world.
Yeah.
If you want to get lied to, set up a sales kickoff annually, because everybody will come in and tell you their tales, and then none of it's ever going to come true.
Oh, I could tell you some interesting things that, yeah. I probably signed some form somewhere that says I can't say those things, but one
Me
day.
too. Yeah, me too.
So you talk about the sales playbook, and then you go into talk about sales process strategy and the buyer's journey. Talk us through
Yeah.
that.
Well, again, first of all, those are the three things in terms of sales execution that are most important. So sales process, thinking about the separate and distinct steps to complete a sale for your business. That's different from strategy, which is your game plan to actually progress along those steps successfully. And what I find, Tim, is just along the lines of process. Process is meant to capture experience and expertise and best practices. So you and a process, by the way, they're separate and distinct steps. So when we start to map out, things on our side, the steps to complete a sale, one of the key messages is just try to earn the right to proceed to the next step in the process. You're not having that first meeting and trying to get to this point where I can put a proposal in front of somebody. You have no chance of winning it. In the same way that when I first met my lovely wife, 3 dates in, I was pretty sure she was the one. But if I had actually tried to close the deal and say, "Hey, move in with me. You're dynamite. You're funny. You're beautiful. You're kind. Why don't you move?" She would have run faster than the flash away from me. The idea was just earn the right to get another date.
You,
Earn the
you
right to
talk
get another
about
date.
you talk about your wife in the book, don't you?
I do. Donna. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's so meaningful, obviously for all of us. That's the most important relationship. But it's also so true. I just tried to earn the right for a couple more dates, and I probably did that 500 times before I had the right to ask her to move in with me.
And I think from a sales perspective, we always have to remember that buyers work at a different timescale to us. So we may be working and thinking, I want to close this deal this quarter, where
Right.
the buyer's actually saying, well, I'm going on holiday.
Right. And the other thing is we kind of go through the steps of our process, but if you ignore the buyer's journey, it doesn't matter. They don't care about our process.
Hmm.
They've got their own world to to worry about. And that's why the third stage of our process, discovery, and our process is just a generic process. When you're trying to figure out how to make a compelling business case, to move forward with your solution, all that matters is that it's in their language, or it's put together the way they assess business cases, or it hits the KPIs and metrics they need to see. Too often time, we kid ourselves saying, "Hey, you'll get a 10x return. You get a 100x return on investment." They don't believe it,
No.
nor will their executives believe it when they take the business case up to them. So we've got to be working with them so that they own the business case to move forward with our solution, and it's in their language, and it meets their KPIs.
So Eduardo's basically said which book, and I think he was joking. Anyway, Andrew very kindly shared the link to your book on
Oh, thank you,
Amazon.
Andrew.
So if anybody does want to buy Mark's book, please, you can go to Amazon there. Just to pick up on what you said, there's a supermarket in the UK called Marks and Spencer's.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, most people, both men and women, got their underwear from Marks and Spencer's. They were famous for selling underwear.
Okay.
And their business cases always, because I know that I've sold to them, was based on the number of men's underpants, additional men's underpants they would sell.
Oh, okay. So unless a project could result in revenue in the front door of
Yes.
those, that's exactly how we looked at it.
Even if it was a back office accounting system, which is what I sold, you had to prove that you could sell more underpants. And the business case was they went to the board and said, we think we can sell 10,000. And that was the unit of measure.
Isn't that interesting? I can't help but smile, Tim. As I mentioned before, my parents were British. So I heard a lot about, I think, is it a nickname for the store? Marks and Sparks.
Marks and
I heard a lot
Sparks.
of Marks and Sparks, even though we were raised
Even
in
though it's
Canada.
Marks and Spencer's, it's known as Marks and Sparks.
Yeah, that's right. That was floated around my house in Toronto in the early 80s quite frequently.
Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the book, Mark, was that you go through that and then you kind of switch.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about then building a sales team.
Yes.
Now, I've never read it. Now, maybe there's a sales book out there about it, but I've never read a sales book that talks about this. So why did you go into this?
Well, because the average salesperson's lasting about 18 months in their role. So either there's a really big problem with sales management, which there is, or we're actually recruiting the wrong people, or we're not setting expectations for the people properly, or we're not giving them a reasonable onboarding plan. I think this is a particularly sinister stat, Tim, because a lot of new professionals go into a professional sales role, right? There are few barriers to entry.
Yeah.
So people graduate college or university, they've got energy, they've got enthusiasm, they take their first professional job, and they either leave or get exited in 18 months on average. I think that's devastating
Mm.
to a new business professional. So frankly, there could be a full book on this, but I at least wanted to touch on some tips for sales leaders. And by the way, also salespeople, because anybody who's smart enough to be reading a sales book to try and get better, eventually they're going to be in management. So I wanted to provide some coaching to help them think about recruiting when the time comes.
So you actually walk through a chapter on the art of interviewing salespeople, don't you?
Yes.
With documentation about what you should use, and I've never seen that before.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Yeah, by the way, with support and credit to Jeff Smart, who wrote Who. So there is a great book on recruiting, particularly senior executives, called Who, and it's by Jeff Smart. He's a second generation expert. His dad invented the top grading interview.
Okay.
And so I really love the framework of Who, and I do give appropriate credit in the book. And then I just manipulated it for professional sales.
Okay. But it's a really nice template in terms of, if you're first time manager or even you're a manager. Thanks. And you want to put some structure, because as you said, quite often with sales, there isn't structure and then mistakes are made.
Well, this is it. And, it's changing now, but for a number of years there, particularly in SaaS, we all had so much pressure on ourselves to build our teams crazy quickly, just ridiculously quickly. So I think we lost our concern for the individual. And so we were a little more concerned with ourselves as sales leaders and just building out the team, hire 30 and, 6 weeks later, 13 or 15 are still there. That's just not the way to do it.
No, it's not. No, I remember seeing a CV coming in from a bricklayer.
Wow. Think of that.
And I asked the advice, and they said, well, if they've put a CV in, then you need to interview them.
Yeah, there you go. There's a perfect example of the problem.
Which is, and then you also do a section on onboarding, which is another area that's quite, here's your laptop, start selling. Where onboarding is so important, isn't it?
It's so critically important. And by the way, it sets the tone. It's so important to set the tone for that person's experience. First impressions matter. That first day when somebody comes into your office, as you said, do you have a laptop and and a cell phone and away you go? Or have you actually announced to the office who's coming in?
Yeah.
Do you have senior executives meeting with them during the first week to properly introduce them to the organization? Of all the people they need to meet in that 4 or 5 week period of, to get them started, do they have to go chase these people down? Or have we pre-set up these meetings and coached the people they're meeting with on how to be most helpful to the new hire? I've been an executive coming in to lead sales organizations where the state of the environment was a complete embarrassment. I sat in my executive assistant's desk for 3 weeks once while the person I was replacing was still working out, their final tenure. So it's all about just making sure, hey, we've got to make the investment, recruit the right people, but then invest in them so that we're ensuring some success. And this will be a huge difference. By the way, that formal onboarding plan, there's responsibility on both sides.
Yes.
We like the training and certification and testing. So the individual has really got to be making sure they're managing their learning curve, and on a weekly basis, let's do some testing or assessment to see if they're learning what they need to learn, versus, hey, Mark, just jump in the car with Tim and spend a couple days on sales calls with Tim.
I've seen salespeople being taken on, and them drowning in the politics, and
Can't get their legs.
and you can just see them. Drowning, and and it's that attitude which you said, which is, well, we'll take 10 on, and 2 will be here in 2 years' time, and
There are large, as you know, there are large enterprise software organizations. They're actually proud of that fact.
yeah,
Where they say, well, listen, this is a sink or swim, and it's part of our test. Can you imagine pulling somebody from another organization, convincing them to join, and then dumping them in the deep end, making sure they have no help or support, and the 1 or 2 survive? By the way, the skills or capabilities for the 1 or 2 that survive, those may not be the values we want in our sales environment anyway.
Hmm.
So this part is particularly broken. And I think there's just easy tips here on things we can all do to just make that experience better for the new hire. It also sets the tone for, how well prepared we are before they get there, shows them how well prepared we expect them to be when they're making sales calls and building their sales plans.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about your new book. Do you want to hold it up so that everybody can see it?
Tim, thank you so much for having me. And
there
folks,
you go. Learn to Love Selling by Mark Cox, which is available on Amazon worldwide. And Mark, where can people find you? Oh, there's another book as well that you can get as well.
Another great book,
Yeah.
Social Selling by Timothy Hughes. People can find us at www.inthefunnel.com, and connect with me, please, on LinkedIn. Thanks, Tim, so much for having me on the show. What a